Ladies and gentlemen, you're watching Train Super Network. Enjoy the trains, West Intro.
Look at that! Aha! Welcome back, 400! Welcome back!
Hey, welcome everybody to part number 2 of the Let's Talk About the Green Bay Blizzard from 2003 to 2025. Yep, part 2, we're going to talk about the Green Bay Blizzard as they now are in the indoor football league. Talk about from 2010 into 2025. So let's begin. We make it to 2010 if we go back to obviously part number 1. We know the Blizzard on a 5-year, the last 5 years they've made the playoffs. Can they continue it with now Richards as their new head coach? He joins the Blizzard, and well, yes, they do, such as they will go first in the Central North Division on a 10-win season, taking down such teams as Sioux City Bandits, the Lacrosse Spartans, not once but twice. They also get out of it with a win against, if I can find what that team is, the Extreme. They take down Maryland Maddox. They take down the Western Michigan Thunder Hawks. They go down, and not once but twice beat those guys. They beat the Omaha Beef. They beat the Wichita Wild and the Chicago Slayers. And well, they make the playoffs. So how could the Blizzard do in the playoffs? Well, it was not a long trip in the playoffs this year. In the first round, in the conference quarterfinals, they lost to Chicago by the final score of 46-39. And well, in the 2010 Union Bowl Championship, Sioux Falls Storm taking on the get the team name for you, the Outlaws, and the Outlaws went out and beat Sioux Falls by a final score of 43-34. So first year in the IFL, hey, look at that, the Blizzard are on something to start the first year. How can 2012 go? Well, we moved to 2011, and well, it goes better than last year. They go out of it with an 11-win season. They win the Great Lakes Division at 11-3. And their 11 wins came against the Wichita Wild, the Extreme, the Nebraska Danger, the Richmond Revolution, the Reading Express, not once but twice. They also take down, let me go back up here. Should have went. Take down the Venom. They take down the Lacrosse Spartans not once but twice. They take down the Steelhawks and the Chicago Slayers. So again, they had another good year in the regular season. Playoff-wise, they get a first round bye, so round 2. They take on the Reading Express, and heck, they will beat the Reading Express to go to the Union Conference Championship, and they win 68-51. And how about it? In year number 2 for the Blizzard, they get to the Union Conference Championship and taking on the Sioux Falls Storm. But unfortunately, that's where it went wrong. Losing by a final score of 52-12. Sioux Falls will move on to the championship, and they end up winning the 2011 Union Bowl to Tri-Cities by the final score of 37-10. So year number two, they made it to the playoffs the last 7 years. Can they make it 8 in a row in 2012? Well, yes, they do. The Blizzard in this season win again. They get to the playoffs in second in the Union Conference, and they get an 11-3 season. And their 11 wins will come out off twice against the Reading Express, twice against the Cedar Rapids Titans, once against the Omaha Beef, once against Chicago, once against the Blooming Edge this year. Yes, now it's the Edge. They get twice against the Edge, twice against the Steelhawks, and once against the Wichita Wild. So again, they're going to the playoffs for the 8th straight year because we're counting it from the AF2 to the IFL. And well, round number one, they win in the conference semifinals against the Edge by a final score of 51-30. So again, the Blizzard will go to the Union Conference Championship, where unfortunately, for the second year in a row, they will lose to the Sioux Falls Storms by a final score of 61-42. And Sioux Falls, they went out and won the 2012 Union Bowl, taking down the Tri-City Fever for the second year in a row by a final score of 59-32. So again, another year where this team couldn't do it again. They couldn't get it there. So how can they do in the 2013, their 10-year anniversary? 10 years in the lead, and well, we enter a rough patch. The Blizzard this year, for the first time since all the way back in 2004, missed the playoffs at a 4-10 record and finished last in the Union Conference. And they had to go for head coaches. Their first 6 games was with Robert Fuller. Then it went to Chad Bolwin. And their 4 wins came against the Cedar Rapids Titans, the Tri-City Fever, the Texas Revolution, and the Nebraska Danger. That's right, we did beat the team that won the Insane Conference that year. And in the 2013 Union Bowl, Sioux Falls again will win the Union Bowl to Nebraska by the final score of 43-40. Folks, if you are a Sioux Falls fan, you may enjoy what you're about to hear for the next couple of years, essentially. As the Blizzard, we move on to 2014. They're wondering, can we get back to our winning ways? Well, not in 2014. Blizzard this year had a worse had a year that kind of goes back to 2003, 2-12 on the year, last in the Union Conference, and again they had to go through head coaches. First 6 games with Chad Bolwin, and then they went to Tommy Williams. And their only 2 wins came against the Cedar Rapids Titans on May 31st. And then the Axemen on June 13th. A rough year in the Rush. As in that year, also new ownership. With the owners, if you follow the Blizzard enough, the current owners of the Green Blizzard, Larry and Caffey, are the current owners as of that. That's when they arrived in. And in the Union Bowl, though, in 2014, again, another trend that we've been getting used to. It was Sioux Falls in Nebraska, and Sioux Falls again wins the Union Bowl in 2014 by the final score of 63-49. So another year, the Blizzard are in the downwinds. Could 2015 be a better year? And you know what? Compared to last year, yes, it is. The Blizzard go out and go 6-8. They finished third this year in the Union Conference under Tommy Williams. They get 6 wins this year against the Tri-City Fever, the Iowa Barnstormers, the Cedar Rapids Titans, the Axemen, and Wichita Falls Nighthawks. Not once, but we beat them twice. But again, another rough year. And in the Union Bowl, I think you're getting used to this trend here, folks. Get used to this for a couple years. This will be the last year we'll see these two teams doing it. Nebraska and Sioux Falls for the third year in a row. Sioux Falls wins against Nebraska in the Union Bowl by a final score of 62-27, and it continues again the trend. Sioux Falls has won 2011. They won 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015. They've won for a while. But in the rush, can the Blizzard rebound in 2016? Well, it was another rough year in the rush. A 5-win season in the Union Conference. They finished fourth out of the fifth. 5-11 season. The 5 wins came against the Nebraska Danger twice, the Iowa Barnstormers, and the Tri-City Fever twice. And in the Union Bowl for 2016, hey, we have a different team for once in one of these. Sioux Falls Storm again as usual, but the Spokane Shucks, welcome back from AF2. They come to the IFL. But again, Sioux Falls continues their run since 2011. They win the 2016 Union Bowl. So again, the trend continues. After that many years, as we enter 2017, can the Blizzard get it going? Can something change? But well, it does not. The Blizzard in 2017 ended off the season with a 3-13 season under Coach Corey Roberson, and their 3 wins. 2 of them came against the Cedar Rapids Titans. One on February 17th, the other one on March 19th, and the other one was against the Salt Lake Screaming Eagles. Yes, you heard that right. The Screaming Eagles. And in the Union Bowl, welcome to another team that we have not talked about. The Arizona Rattlers. Welcome to the IFL. They're in the championship taking on a team that has won since 2011. Yep, the Sioux Falls Storm are back. But for the first time since 2000, we have a different winner. It is the Arizona Rattlers win the 2017 Union Bowl by a final score of 50-41 against the Sioux Falls Storm. Hey, somebody else won. Look at that. It's a sign of positives in the IFL. Sioux Falls can win every year. But we move into 2018. The Blizzard asking, can this be the year we get back to the playoffs? Well, no. In 2018, the Green Bay Blizzard ended off the season last in the IFL at a 2-12 season, and their 2 wins came against the Nebraska Danger. Only them. They beat twice on May 5th and May 18th. So a rough year, and they had head coach first 5 games. They had Chris Williams, and then the rest of the season it went to Corey Roberson, the Blizzard head coach that you are very much aware of if you follow them. But in the Union Bowl, This year is the Iowa Barnstormers and the Sioux Falls Storm. And for the first time, we hear the Iowa Barnstormers winning the 2018 Union Bowl. They are now, we have 2 different years. The last 2 years, we've had different winners other than Sioux Falls. But the question will be, as we enter 2019, can finally this be the year that the Green Bay Blizzard make the return to the playoffs? And yes, it is. In 2019, we go. The Green Bay Blizzard, for the first time since all the way back in 2012, make the playoffs. And they go 9-5, and their 9 wins came twice against the Nebraska Danger, the San Diego Strike Force once, the Quad City Steamrollers twice, the Bismarck Bucks twice, the Iowa Barnstormers once, and the Cedar Rapid River Kings now, as they're known, twice. But yeah, new teams obviously to be aware of. But again, the Blizzard made the playoffs. How did they do this year? Well, as we go to round number 1 of the playoffs, it did not last long for the Green Bay Blizzard as they suffered a round 1 loss to the Nebraska Danger by the final score of 45-40. But hey, for the Blizzard fans, it's a moment to celebrate. You made the playoffs for the first time since 2012. A 7-year drought has ended. But in the Union Bowl, we say hello to some old foes. The Sioux Falls Storm and the Iowa Barnes, the Arizona Rattlers. But Sioux Falls, the first time since 2016, win the Union Bowl, and they're back to their winning ways. But and obviously, we know the 2020 season, we never got to see what happened. There were only 2 games that were played that season before COVID happened. So therefore, we'll give a round of applause to Quad City and San Diego. You're the only 2 that won a game in 2020 before the season ended. So we'll move on to 2021. The Blizzard are asking themselves, can they do this and can they win? Well, not a good year in the playoffs. They ended off 10th in the division, missing out on the playoffs, but their 5 wins being against the Massachusetts Pirates, the Louisville Extreme, which that's a story of another thing. They only did 5 games before the team terminated mid-season. The Tucson Sugar Skulls they beat once, and they beat the Iowa Barnstormers twice to end off at a 5-9 season. No playoffs this year for the team, but we go to the 2021 Union Bowl as this year we meet a team that has not made it for the first time. We do not see a Sioux Falls. This year it is the Massachusetts Pirates and the Arizona Rattlers. And the Pirates win the Union Bowl for the first time, and they will join along with the list. So hey, new teams, we have different champions. But can the Blizzard get back to success? 2022 wise, it was not the year for that. Blizzard finished off in a 6-10 season. Hey, they did better than last year. 6 wins came against the Massachusetts Pirates, the Vegas Nighthawks, the Bismarck Bucks, the Iowa Barnstormers, the Quad City Steamrollers, and the Sioux Falls Storm to finish off 6-10. And unfortunately, they finished 6th in the Eastern Conference. In the playoffs, though, with the IFL National Championship, this year, the Northern Arizona Wranglers win the title, beating out the Quad City Steamrollers by a final score of 47-45. So, again, new champions are entering the lead. But can the Blizzard return back to the playoffs into 2023? Well, unfortunately, it was not this year. Blizzard finished off at a 7-8, missing out on the playoffs, being fifth, and only the top four in each of the conferences make the playoffs. Their 7 wins came against 3 times the Iowa Barnstormers, the Sioux Falls Storm, the Massachusetts Pirates, the San Diego Strike Force, the Quad City Steamrollers, and for the first year, we'll meet a new team, the Tucson Oilers. We beat them in their inaugural season, obviously in the lead. But in the championship game here in 2023, we had for this year, we meet the Bay Area Panthers versus the Sioux Falls Storm, and the Bay Area Panthers win the 2023 IFL National Championship game by a final score of 51-41. But we enter out of the 2023 season, and the Blizzard saying itself, say, last 3 years, we keep getting better every year. Can 2024 be the year we get back to the playoffs? And yes, sorry, it is. The Blizzard, they're back in the playoffs, and they won the Eastern Conference, finishing the season 13-3 in the regular season. With their wins 3 times, they beat the Iowa Barnstormers, they beat the Quad City Steamrollers twice, they beat the Sioux Falls Storm twice, they beat the Tucson Oilers twice, the Frisco Fighters they beat the Pirates not once but twice, and they beat the Jacksonville Shark to make it to the playoffs for the first time. And well, in the playoffs, meanwhile, for this Green Bay Blizzard team, round 1, they had to take on the Quad City Steamrollers, and the Blizzard got the win by a final score of 34-23. So the Blizzard this year get to the Eastern Conference Championship game, and they got to take on the Massachusetts Pirates. If they win it, they're going to the IFL Championship game, but unfortunately, they miss out on the playoffs, losing by a final score of 51-28, ending off one of the best seasons in Green Bay Blizzard history that we've seen in a while. And meanwhile, then, Arizona Rattlers won the IFL Championship game by a final score of 53-16. So the Blizzards celebrate. They make the playoffs, but you know what? There's a sour note they were left with as taste. They couldn't get to the championship game. Could 2025, could they make it back to the playoffs, and could they get this team to the IFL championship game? Well, firstly, the Blizzard did make the playoffs. For the second year in a row, they make the playoffs. They finish second in the Eastern Conference, just behind the Quad City Steamrollers. And their 10 wins this year came against the Iowa Barnstormers 3 different times, the Tucson Oilers, the Pirates not once but twice, the Quad City Steamrollers twice, Fisher's Freight, yes, a new team in the league. The Fisher's Freight they beat, and the Jacksonville Shark. But again, the Blizzard make it again to the playoffs. Round 1, they had to take on the Tucson Oilers at home at the Rush, and such happened. The Blizzard getting a round 1 victory, beating the Tucson Oilers by a final score of 58-26. So the Blizzard again, they make it to here, the Eastern Conference Championship, this time against the Quad City Steamrollers. Winner would be heading to Tucson, Arizona to take on the winner of Vegas and San Diego, and the Blizzard this time did not slip up, and they beat the Quad City Steamrollers to go to the national championship game in the IFL final score of that game, and an absolutely amazing game that I watched, the Blizzard won 71 to 64, a high scoring, intense game. But the Blizzard came out on top and will be going to the national championship in Tucson. But they got to meet up with the number 4 seed, the Vegas Nighthawks. Well, wow, what a game regardless. And it came down to the end. One play the Blizzard had. They were at the 1-inch yard line. All they had to do was score a touchdown and they would be the national championships. But it was a bad snap and Vegas stopped the Blizzard. And the Vegas Nighthawks beat the Green Bay Blizzard to become the champions of the IFL in 2025 by a final score of 64 to 61. And it ended like that for the Green Bay Blizzard. They missed out by 1 inch to become the national champions. But that is it, everybody. Thank you all very much for watching. And folks, I hope you all enjoyed this 2-part series of talking about the Green Bay Blizzard from 2003 to 2025. And if you did enjoy, please hit the like and subscribe. This will be going out in before the Green Bay Blizzard take on. Make sure I have the game here, folks, for you guys, so you know who will be playing. Because it'll probably be good for you to know, maybe. Let's see here if I can get the game up. This will go out in time before the Green Bay Blizzard take on the Fisher's Freight on March 21st. So thank you, everybody, for watching. And we'll see you guys for that. Peace out, everybody.